So it was actually very confusing at that time.
And what is the hantavirus? Where does it come from?
So here is some little bit of information that goes all the way back to 2024. Korea University and Moderna collaborate to develop mRNA-based hantavirus vaccine. This is from September of 2024. In July, the Vaccine Innovation Center at Korea University College of Medicine announced entering into a collaboration with Cambridge, Massachusetts-based pharmaceutical and biotech company Moderna to develop an mRNA-based hantavirus vaccine. What is it that we know with absolute certainty about the Moderna vaccine? It is the vaccine that caused a lot of injuries and potentially a lot of deaths. I was very fortunate. I got the Pfizer vaccine, and I only got it because I had no other choice because of my job. And at the time, I waited till the rollout for the vaccine, and I use that term very loosely, was in January of 2021. I didn't get it until almost 9 months later. So a lot of stuff had already come out at that point. We already knew which was being effective, which wasn't. So I ended up getting the Pfizer one. But I know people personally who took the mRNA vaccine and they've been injured and their lives have never been the same since. So,
all right. So this article is from September 24.
Correct.
And it is saying that back in July, they entered into collaboration for this vaccine.
Correct.
Right. See, I don't believe in coincidences. You know what I mean?
Neither do I. Although a hantavirus vaccine developed by Professor Ho Wang Lee's team at Korea University has been in use since its approval in 1990.
Okay.
The designation of hantavirus as a potential disease X pathogen by the WHO, or as we should call it, the New World Order, underscores the need for a new vaccine effective against a broader range of hantavirus strains.
And how convenient that you just went into a contract to create that and make money off of it. That's so convenient that now there's a new virus and that's so coincidental, no?
No, Jen, there are, you're just noticing too much. Colin? The Vaccine Innovation Center has provided Moderna with hantavirus antigen sequence information, and Moderna provided mRNA material from the Vaccine Innovation Center. Recent Vaccine Innovation Center conducted antigen expression studies with the material. Moving forward, the center plans to utilize preclinical mRNA vaccine candidates, test trials, provided by Moderna to develop a hantavirus vaccine effective against a wider range of virus strains compared to existing vaccines. Francesca Sidia, Moderna's chief medical officer, emphasized, this partnership is expected to strengthen mRNA vaccine research and development capabilities in Korea and bring significant advancements in public health. Yes, significant advancements in public health, as in the for-profit health that we have in the United States.
And how do you facilitate that? You facilitate that by having a horrible panic, scare, false flag situation running rampant in this country so that it's manufacturing consent to give more money to big pharma so that they can make a solution for a problem that only exists because they created it.
I think you're, again, noticing a little too much.
I'm just trying to make sure I'm understanding this correctly. Okay.
Aijin Xiong, director of VIC-K, remarked, it is meaningful to continue the legacy of the late Professor Ho Wang Lee, who first isolated the hantavirus and contributed to vaccine development. We will maintain close collaboration with Moderna to successfully develop an mRNA-based hantavirus vaccine and contribute to global public health. Let me be very clear about this.
So it'll be free? So then it'll be free, right?
Two rules of thumb here. Two rules of thumb. First one, do I think the hantavirus is real? Absolutely, I do. what I do believe is that these viruses are typically created in laboratories for the specific purpose of controlling the human population. If they decide that they have to put things into motion because the humans are either getting a little too frisky with their revolutionary tendencies, or they are simply not being able to control certain populations because they do not use protection, they are concentrating in way too many areas where the resources are being completely depleted. There's a litany of different reasons why they would do it. There's also the reason that people just want to play God, that people get off on the idea of being able to kill people and get away with it. This is one of the reasons why a lot of people go into government, because in government, you can legally kill people. There's just different ways of doing it. Like I said, there's a difference between using a handgun, using a shotgun, or using a virus. Now, what if you just want to off a bunch of people because, that's just what you want to do? And in this case, bring it full circle, here's where we are today. Hantavirus infected cruise ship. This is from today. America not prepared for possible outbreak amid Trump-era cuts, experts say. Latest updates.
Okay, and how convenient. And now all of them are going to go and they're going to invest in Moderna.
Of course.
And they're going to, or whatever, that's this time. It could be whatever company.
This is no different.
Then they're going to create this panic, right? And then.
Well, it's already happening. It's happening right now, and we're going to explain why. So, health experts have expressed concern for the readiness of the U.S. to handle a widespread outbreak of hantavirus after it was revealed a number of passengers have returned to the U.S. after disembarking a cruise ship before they realized a contagious and deadly disease was circulating on board. It turns out that they knew that the disease was circulating on board, and they let them off anyway.
Oh.
From today, Dr. Janine Marazzo, CEO, doctor and CEO, those two things should never go together, but they do. CEO of the Infectious Diseases Society of America. How much funding you think they get from the U.S. government with that shit? Says the U.S. is not prepared to handle a hantavirus outbreak after Trump-era cuts to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention and USAID, as well as the country's withdrawal from the WHO. You can't leave Big Brother. Not allowed. Doctors speak up to dispute a viral online claim that ivermectin, an FDA-approved parasitic most commonly used as a dewormer for livestock, could be used to treat hantavirus. Newsflash, there are two forms of ivermectin, just so we're clear, and they're not saying this in the article. There is ivermectin for livestock, and there is ivermectin for humans. Bet you didn't know that. If you listen to MSDNC or a couple of other organizations out there, you would never know such a thing, but it's true. Ocean-wide Expeditions, operator of the cruise ship MV Honduras, says that at least 29 living passengers from 12 countries.
That's a weird way to say that. 29 living passengers?
From 12 countries disembarked the ship and went home after the death of the first passenger on board before officials knew of the outbreak. Those countries are Canada, Denmark, Germany, Netherlands, New Zealand, Switzerland, Sweden, Singapore, St. Kitts, Nevis, Turkey, the United Kingdom, and the United States. What does that all have in common, ladies and gentlemen? It means that you have people from all different corners of the globe, from New Zealand, which is the end of civilization, into the Pacific, to all the way across the Pacific into the United States, Canada, across the Atlantic, into Europe, and then ultimately into Asia. This is not a mistake. So when they say that everybody from all places are getting it, you're kind of seeing a pattern here. Texas health officials have said they are tracking 2 residents who are not showing symptoms, who were passengers on the HV Honduras, the cruise ship connected to the cases. Dr. Tedros Ghebreyesus, director of the WHO. No, there you go.
Racist?
Says some of the passengers shared an airplane to Johannesburg with a woman from the ship who later died. Ghebreyesus says none of the remaining passengers on crew aboard the MV Honduras are symptomatic, but that is possible more cases will be reported because it can be up to 6 weeks before those infected with the Andes variant of hantavirus show symptoms. He insisted the public health risk remains low. Of course he does. Should never have
Okay,
been
so
allowed.
then why is this such a big thing then?
Dutch flight attendant who has developed mild symptoms is being tested for the disease after she briefly came into contact with one of the deceased hantavirus patients. Yeah. So I don't know if they're going to explain this here, but how is the hantavirus transmitted? How do you get it? Turns out that it typically comes from rodent feces. That's where it comes from. And of course, the rodents have to be infected. Now, what you're doing ingesting any type of rodent feces is a whole other story.
It's not that's not how that works, but okay.
Well, again, an international team of scientists is working to create a vaccine against the hantavirus. Yeah, we already pointed that out from several years back. The CDC reportedly tells employees Luis Rodriguez, the American official responsible for public health on cruise ships, is retiring. Again, who gives a shit? WHO epidemic expert Maria Van Kerkhove tells reporters this is not the next COVID, but it is a serious infectious disease. Most people will never be exposed to this. I am hearing varying reports that the fatality rate from this virus, the human strand of the hantavirus, is as low as less than 1% to as high as 15%. And then there are those suggesting that the mortality rate is 38%. So who the hell knows? But if the powers that be want to kill a swath of the population, they're going to do it. Which is why revolution is becoming more and more clear. WHO confirms the number of lab-proven hantavirus cases has risen to 5, and there are still at least 3 additional suspected cases among cruise ship passengers and crew. Does anybody not think for a second that even if this is true, that this wasn't thrust upon us on purpose? Does anyone not think that? Jen?
Of course. Well, I as somebody who doesn't do cruises because I think of them as giant floating petri dishes, none of this is surprising to me, but from what I'm seeing, from what people are saying, this is not a new virus. So, and if I don't understand why this is so newsworthy, then I guess I'm not understanding.
Well, it is possible that there is a strand out there that is potent enough to start killing people, and the whole
Well,
point is
it's all possible, but it hasn't happened. And so what that sounds like to me is kind of fear mongering.
oh, of course, but that's the whole point. That's what the WHO does, because again, it's all about money and power. Everything in life within the ruling class is about money and power. That is
Yeah,
never
I mean,
changed.
they're gonna, yeah, whatever. It's just another way for them to find people to scare, distract us from other things, be able to profit off of big pharma. That's all.
Of course.
Same old.
Argentine officials suggest the hantavirus outbreak could have originated from a bird watching outing that took the deceased Dutch couple to a landfill where they may have been exposed to rodents carrying the virus before boarding the ship. I tell you, the way they come up with this stuff is actually kind of inspiring in many ways, that they could be so depraved in how they view humanity that they're just like, yeah, does that work? Is that a good one? Yeah. They ran up a shit hill and contracted it that way. Health officials confirm the deadly hantavirus outbreak is of a particular disease strain called Andes, one of the deadliest variants of the hantavirus and the only known strain that transmits from person to person. Spanish Health Minister Monica Garcia says the MV Honduras is en route to Grandilla port in Tenerife, Canary Islands, where passengers will be allowed to leave the ship by May 11th. Spanish citizens and those with symptoms will be quarantined, and people from other countries with no symptoms will be sent home. But didn't you just say that it could take up to 6 weeks for symptoms to show? So it almost seems to me like they're purposely allowing this to happen. Just a thought.
Well, I mean, yeah.
How
They're just
much more
gonna
does it
keep
have,
being
Tom?
fun.
All right, there's definitely, we've gotten our fill, if you will. And I want to bring a very important point here. As I've been saying, I don't doubt for a second that this has the potential to be very dangerous. But
exactly, Tony D.
don't go on a cruise.
And for
Yes.
so many other reasons, but yes. And
That's
anybody
true.
who it has nothing to do with that. I think I'm too good for a cruise. I spend time in a camper trailer, so it has nothing to do with that. I'm too good to be on a cruise. It really is, and I'm not a germaphobe. I am not big on organized leisure activity, and then to put it on a floating petri dish. No.
If people think that if the powers that be think that they are convinced that that the people will not rebel and that they can continue to every so often do these test runs when it comes to basically destroying the economy, destroying the environment, and basically killing people, yes, I don't think it's a stretch. I just don't. I think it's always better to be extra cautious. And why is that? Here's a video that really sums it up. You always wonder why Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, and his administration were so hell-bent on getting rid of Muammar Gaddafi back in 2011.
Yeah, what was that about? Is there a connection you're making here, Peter?
Well, it's funny you should ask, Jen. It turns out that Muammar Gaddafi made a speech less than 2 years before his fate was sealed. And here's what he had to say back in 2009.
انفلونزا بتاعت الخنازير وان شاء الله تجيكم انفلونزا بتاعت الاسماك في المستقبل على اي حال لان المصانع تشتغل بتاعت المخابرات هذه اذا كانت هي تباع بثمن غالي معناها تجاره يصنعوا فيروس وينشروه في العالم باش الشركات الراسماليه تحصل اموال.
They create a virus that they spread around the world so that capitalistic companies can make massive profits. Now, why would Muammar Gaddafi make such a statement, even though he was regarded as such a tyrant? And he may very well have been a tyrant in Libya, but here's what I can say with absolute certainty that anyone who lived in Libya always spoke to. Libya was a resource-rich country, extremely resource-rich country. We stole all their stuff. But at the time,
it was the wealthiest country on the continent.
Correct. And what did Gaddafi do with all the wealth and riches for the Libyan people? He gave it to them. They had universal health care, universal education, infrastructure projects, you name it. They had it. And he didn't want to do business with the United States. So the United States decided, well, I guess we're just going to have to get rid of you. And that's where the whole
you mean kind of like Nicolas Maduro?
Just a little bit. Okay. Just a little bit. And so in the case of Gaddafi, he's making it very clear that if you've seen one, you've seen them all. You know exactly how this is going to go down. And this is how it's going down. So
and people wonder why the Iranians aren't going to deal with us.
Why would they?
They've seen what happens when people deal with us.
Amen.
ببيع الاموال عيب هذا حرام عليكم الامصال لا تباع الدواء لا يباع اقروا الكتاب الاخضر لا يسمح ببيع الدواء لا يباع.
See that? See that, guys? We shouldn't have to pay for vaccinations. They should be free.
Well, again, that's some crazy socialism talk right there.
Commie shit.
That's some commie shit right there.
Haven't you once thought about the pharmaceutical industry, you tyrannical bastard?
اعلنوا يقولوا الدواء مجاني الامصال المجانيه مش حتنتشر الفيروسات لان يخلقوا فيها باش يعملوا امصال وباش تكسب منها الشركات الراسماليه.
Reasonable.
هذه معالجه خطا. اعلنوا الادويه لا تباع مجانيه. واذا كانت حتى فيروسات حقيقيه يجب لا الامصال لا نبيع الامصال، يجب نبيع نعطيها بلاش. العالم يبذل جهد ويصنع هذه الامصال لينقذ نفسه.
Put up what Willie's saying because this is interesting too. I knew that they had the highest standard of I knew they were doing the best economically. And yes, this is sounding familiar. Willie Bragg saying that Gaddafi wanted a common currency for the people of Africa, And we just can't allow that.
No, and he was way ahead of his time. And if Gaddafi was still in charge today, or if one of the connected members of his family were in charge today, if he had ultimately passed, Gaddafi was not young. In fact, let me see. At the time of his death, he was almost 70. But here's the point.
Hi,
Today,
Pac-Woman, thanks for those ruse.
yeah. So today, Gaddafi would be about 84, I think. So let's assume he's still alive, or if he wasn't alive, you think that they would not be part of BRICS right now? You better believe they would be. The threat
If
is
he were still alive, if what happened in Libya hadn't happened in Libya, I believe that what's going on in that whole Sahel region and that Western Africa with Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, and a lot of those things, I think would have happened sooner. I think there would have been a sooner push to get the French out. I mean, I think it would have happened sooner, but that's what they were trying to avoid all this time. That was the thing. He was way too strong of an economy to have that in Africa.